Committee will come to order.
More dramatic testimony in this week's final public impeachment hearings into Donald Trump.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
From two witnesses, former White House expert on Russia, Fiona Hill, and U.S. Embassy official in Ukraine, David Holmes.
Thank you, and you may be seated.
Both saying Thursday it was clear Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, was pushing for investigations in Ukraine that would benefit the U.S. president politically, and that mentions of the Ukrainian company Burisma were a clear reference to probes into Trump's domestic political rival, Joe Biden, and Biden's son.
It was very apparent to me that that was what Rudy Giuliani intended, yes. Intended to convey that Burisma was linked to the Bidens, and he said this publicly, repeatedly.
And Mr. Holmes, you also understood that Burisma was code for Biden's?
Yes.
And do you think that anyone involved in Ukraine matters in the spring and this summer would understand that as well?
Yes.
And Hill said former National Security Advisor John Bolton gave this description of Trump's attorney.
That Rudy Giuliani was a hand grenade that was going to blow everyone up.
Hill attended a July 10th White House meeting in which U.S. Ambassador to the EU, Gordon Sondland, who testified Wednesday, raised the prospect of the investigations with high-level Ukrainian officials. Hill testified that Bolton told her to report the incident to the top National Security Council lawyer.
Ambassador Bolton told me that I am not part of this whatever drug deal that Mulvaney and Sondland are cooking up.
What did you understand him to mean by the drug deal that Mulvaney and Sondland were cooking up?
I took it to mean investigations for a meeting.
In the Democrat-led inquiry, Trump is accused of abuse of power by pressing Ukraine to look into his potential political opponent by using a White House visit and $400 million in frozen U.S. security aid to Ukraine as leverage in a quid pro quo, meaning a favor for a favor.
My clear impression was that the security assistance hold was likely intended by the president either as an expression of dissatisfaction with the Ukrainians, who had not yet agreed to the Burisma-Biden investigation, or as an effort to increase the pressure on them to do so.
At the center of the inquiry is a July 25th phone call in which Trump asked the Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky to look into the Bidens and the 2016 U.S. election. The day after that call, Sondland spoke with Trump in a phone call that was overheard by Holmes.
While Ambassador Sondland's phone was not on speakerphone, I could hear the president's voice through the earpiece of the phone. The president's voice was loud and recognizable. And Ambassador Sondland held the phone away from his ear for a period of time, presumably because of the loud volume. Ambassador Sondland replied yes, he was in Ukraine, and went on to state that President Zelensky, quote, loves her ass. I then heard President Trump ask, so he's going to do the investigation. Ambassador Sondland replied that he's going to do it, adding that President Zelensky will do anything you ask him to do.
Trump, who's repeatedly denied wrongdoing, trying to undermine Holmes' account, tweeting during the hearing, I have been watching people make phone calls my entire life. My hearing is and has been great. Never have I been watching a person making a call which was not on speakerphone and been able to hear or understand a conversation. I've even tried, but to no avail, tried live.
This impeach-a-palooza tour finally comes to an end.
With an eye on the Senate, Republicans gearing up for their next impeachment battle defending the U.S. president. And still ahead, stern testimony warning about Russian interference in the 2020 election.
We're running out of time to stop them.
What you've seen in this room over the past 2 weeks is a show trial.
This president believes he is above the law.
The verdict was decided before the trial ever began.
We are better than that. Adjourned.
Closing statements Thursday from the House Intelligence Committee's top-ranking Democrat and Republican after testimony wrapped up from the final scheduled witnesses in the public impeachment hearings into Donald Trump. The Democrat-led probe is looking into whether Trump wrongly conditioned $400 million in U.S. aid for Ukraine on a public statement by the Ukrainian president saying Ukraine was launching investigations that would benefit Trump politically. Trump has repeatedly denied wrongdoing. He and his fellow Democrats calling the inquiry a hoax.
There's a lot of Americans who look at this and they think, is that it, really? You're going to impeach and remove a president for this? Zero evidence of any bribery. Zero evidence of extortion. Zero evidence firsthand of any quid pro quo.
But some Democrats argue that the July 25th phone call at the center of the inquiry is proof in itself of wrongdoing.
We have now heard and seen substantial evidence that the president, in fact, tried to trade a political favor for official government resources. The most damning words come from no one else but the president himself on that phone call with the Ukrainian president, where he asked for a favor. He mentions investigations. He mentions the Bidens and Burisma.
During the final testimony, a warning that goes beyond the inquiry from Trump's former Russia advisor Fiona Hill, who urged U.S. lawmakers not to promote politically driven falsehoods that cast doubt on Russia's interference in the 2016 U.S. election.
Right now, Russia's security services and their proxies have geared up to repeat their interference in the 2020 election. We are running out of time to stop them.
Thursday's hearing could mark the end of the investigation phase of the impeachment proceedings. Next up, the evidence could go to the House Judiciary Committee to consider drafting formal charges, known as articles of impeachment, against Trump. Democratic lawmakers say that is unlikely to happen before the American Thanksgiving next week. The Republican-controlled Senate would have the ultimate final say on whether to remove Trump from office.